Our mindset is just a muscle that we need to constantly be working on. Just like if we want to train for a marathon, you need to run, or you want to be bigger and stronger, you need to lift.
Welcome to the Cultivating Leaders Podcast, where we get inside the minds of leaders to harvest great ideas and lessons that help you grow as a difference maker in food and agriculture. I'm your host and curiosity captain, Nicole Ursig. Today, I am joined by John Sachse, who shares a deep passion for building a resilient mindset and providing leaders with the tools to step into their potential. John is a cattleman, Army National Guard officer, and a proud AFA alum. John, welcome to the pod.
Nicole, really honored and blessed to have this connection, have this opportunity with you guys today. I want to first off start with congratulating AFA with all the hard work, the effort that you guys have put in the last 15, 20 plus years. I truly started my professional development probably about kind of halfway through college when I became familiar with AFA, what it stood for, what it did and continues to do for young leaders within the agriculture industry, agriculture community in college. Those track 3 and 4s were game changers, kind of reset the trajectory of my life in college, and so blessed and honored to kind of be at the phase of my life to start giving back to AFA. So I want to congratulate you guys for all your hard work, and you guys are doing some great things.
Well, thank you, John. We appreciate that. And thanks for being a part of it. Before we dive into all the things we're going to talk about today, I want to get a little bit of a better feel for your background. So tell me about your leadership and career journey and how you got to where you are today and what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis.
I wish I could answer what it is on a day-to-day basis succinctly, but Nicole, every day is truly a little bit different. You mentioned just a little bit about my background. I serve as an officer in the National Guard, moving into company command here soon. I currently have the privilege to teach resiliency to soldiers at my unit, and that's been such a blessing for me to get to know my soldiers at a deep level. Growing up in ag, you're just immersed in all the stress that being an entrepreneur comes with that. But agriculture, there's just so much out of our control. There's so much out of our control in the military as well. And so I've had some really unique experiences moving back to our ranch. I think it was early 2018, end of 2017. Nicole, we had a really rough time moving back to my family's cattle operation, and we have crops as well here. But my wife is not initially from agriculture, so we moved back December 2017, January 2018. We started calving middle of January and had a blizzard hit us, started losing calves right and left. My wife and I were actually expecting our first son at the time. And then coupled with that, my wife grew up in Wichita, Kansas. And so being on a farm and ranch every single day and not always having an outlet to, take away the stresses that we all deal with, it was a very low, dark point in our marriage. And it was kind of around that time that I began to really delve more into the personal development space, personal growth. And I had heard the term resiliency before. I didn't really know what it meant until I joined the Army National Guard in 2019. And basic training is like no other experience you'll ever have. It's hard to explain what that's like to somebody that hasn't experienced it. I hit my lowest of lows at basic training, and I saw others experiencing their lowest of lows. The point of basic training is to break you down at deep levels, and then to build you back up in a certain way. I saw things that I still remember to this day, and it was during that time at basic training that I realized, hey, each one of us here in my company, we're all experiencing the same stressors each and every day. We're all getting yelled at. We're all physically and mentally exhausted. We're all having the same stuff happen to us each and every day. But I began to realize, hey, those of us who can wake up with a new, fresh perspective the next morning, those of us who could do that were those who could bounce back, had adversity, and could respond to the stressors that were put on us. And that came back with me when I graduated from basic and came back to our ranch. I could apply those same principles, because whether you're working in an office setting, like those of you who work for AFA or whatever companies that you might work for, or you're in production agriculture, we're all facing similar struggles and challenges, but those of us who can bounce back from that day after day, those are the resilient individuals. And so really it's been a unique tie with the military and my agriculture background that has really taught me the importance of resiliency.
Yeah, absolutely. What inspired you to join the Army National Guard?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and honestly, Nicole, for me, I was very comfortable. I was very good at the work I had done. I contribute some of this to the connections that I made at AFA and the leadership development. But I had the opportunity right after I graduated from college at Kansas State to work for one of Kansas's U.S. senators, and then used to serve on the Kansas Beef Council staff and did a lot of beef checkoff work. Both of those jobs I was really, really good at. I was confident in it. I gained a lot of confidence through doing those roles. And I was just feeling kind of complacent in life. And I'm somebody that looks for the next mountain to climb, the next challenge. I can't stand complacency. There is a time and a place for that, but I just felt like I was not challenging myself in the way that others needed me to be, if that makes sense. And so I knew the military would put me out of my comfort zone. It still does to this day. I'm faced with a lot of things that I don't initially know how to handle, but needed that next mountain to climb, if you will. And didn't do it for the money or the pay or anything like that, but just wanted to challenge myself and grow. I think anytime we step out of our comfort zone, there is so much growth and potential that can come from that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sounds like you're someone that really enjoys a challenge, wants to continue to grow and get better. And through that, you have found that a mindset is a key to being successful and overcoming those challenges. How do you define a resilient mindset?
There's different definitions of resiliency, I think, but the one that I use often is I like to share an analogy when I talk about resiliency with my soldiers in particular, or if I'm taking on a new coaching client in my business. To me, I think of resiliency as, say you're up on top of your house or some kind of building and you have an egg and a tennis ball. And that egg and the tennis ball both represent individuals, you and I. The egg looks perfect on the outside looking in. It might be you or I, but it's an individual that's not working on themselves. They're not growth oriented. And when they hit something, they crack, they fracture, they break. They don't know how to hold up when adversity hits. And so, if you took that egg, you dropped it on the ground, that ground represents a hard surface, an obstacle or roadblock that we might be facing in our lives, and it breaks. But then you've got the tennis ball. The tennis ball is us who are working on our mindset, who are growth oriented, who know how to challenge the narrative, who deal with adversity well. And what happens when you drop that tennis ball? It has the same obstacle or roadblock or hurdle that the egg had, the hard ground. The challenge in our lives between those two different people could be the same, but when it hits the ground, it's going to bounce back. And I would take it one step further, Nicole, that if you took video of the tennis ball and you were to zoom in on that tennis ball hitting the ground, not only does it bounce back, but it actually reforms, remorphs. It kind of changes its shape to better accept that ground and hard surface. And so to me, a resilient individual not only bounces back from adversity, but they actually look forward to those obstacles, those hurdles, those roadblocks, because on the other side of that is a better version of themselves.
Oh, I like that. Resiliency and grit, I think, feel like very similar terms. And in agriculture, I feel like a lot of times we are like grit is a value, like you got to push through, you got to muscle through things. And what you're talking about is being a little bit more fluid and changing yourself. And we're talking about mindset and in some circles in agriculture, right? Like that may even sound a little like woo woo or too soft. How do you balance some of this traditional mindset of, grit, hard work, muscle through it with what you're preaching and sharing and teaching people?
Yeah, I like that question. Mental health gets such a negative connotation, just has such a negative stigma in general, but especially amongst guys, and then probably the older generation, my dad, my uncle, that generation, they just don't like talking about their emotions, their thoughts, their feelings. But to me, and I don't use the mental health term as much so as I almost consider it brain health, because our brain is just as much of a muscle as our biceps or our calves, other parts of our body that we think of as muscles. Our mind and our brain is just as much of a muscle. And so when I think of mental health, I actually think of brain health. And for us to get to the next level in whatever business we're doing, or maybe we want to be stronger husbands or wives for our spouses, or stronger leaders of our family, our mindset is just a muscle that we need to constantly be working on. Just like if we want to train for a marathon, you need to run, or you want to be bigger and stronger, you need to lift. Our mind is just as much of a muscle. And with guys, especially when I talk with them, whether it's my soldiers, I try to tackle the mental health kind of through the lens of resiliency and then leadership training, because we're at a subconscious level, we're discussing and hitting on mental health, but we're talking about through the lens of resiliency and leadership and stuff. So
I love that. I love the way you describe it also as a brain health and your brain as a muscle. So I'm a distance runner. I'm training for a marathon right now. The one thing to push through, like I started to get up into some high mileage runs that I've never done before. And one of the things I tell myself is the brain is the strongest muscle in the body and I'm in control of it. And so when you think about it from like a workout standpoint, it feels normal, I think, both from a whether you're thinking soldier or strength or anything along those lines, both from a you have to build the muscle and you have to do the reps, but also something else I've learned as a distance runner is that you can overdo it and you can get injured. And same thing can happen with your brain.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I was gonna, I guess before your last statement, I was gonna comment our minds will stop way before our bodies will. And so if you can get over that hurdle mentally, uh, we physically are so much more capable of so much more physically than we give ourselves credit for. But you have to be smart with it. So like you said, we can be injury prone, and so you've got to work on the little things to prevent injury. But I hear you on the injury. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate between, hey, I'm feeling some pain, I need to push through that to become the better version of myself. But also when I was training for my first marathon, I was having some pain that wasn't really going away, and I chose to push beyond that, and I actually should have paused, been stretching more for the amount that I was running. And so sometimes it's hard to differentiate between the two. But
Yes, yes. Talk about resiliency. There's so much that's connected to the physical piece of it. Obviously, the two of us like to run for that piece, but if you're someone who likes a challenge, it's definitely something to relate to. So, John, what are 3 tips? Okay, I want to become a more resilient person. I want to have a more resilient mindset. What are 3 things that I can do today or tomorrow to build that muscle?
I'm a firm believer that we have everything already inside of us to get to that next level of, in business, or we want to be the best version of ourselves. We already have everything inside of us. We just sometimes struggle to figure out how to unlock that. But the good thing is that we can start today. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. You don't have to wait till next week. There's some simple things that, I shouldn't say simple, but there's some easy things, tools that you can start to put in place today to begin to develop that resilient mindset. First and foremost for me, Nicole, is I work a lot with my clients on goal setting. It seems like just an easy thing to say, oh yeah, let's work on goals. But when you are goal oriented, you know what you're chasing, you have vision behind it, it just adds so much clarity and focus on the days that you don't want to continue, the tough days when you have the vision of here's my 6-month goal, here's my 3-year goal, whatever it is, whatever time length. When you tap that into your why, and that's actually my second thing, is identifying your why, you just gain so much clarity and focus, and it helps get you over those hurdles on the days that you don't want to continue doing whatever you're doing, whether it's train for a marathon or some days I don't want to parent. I hate admitting that, but some days it's tough. And so identifying goals that are what's called SMART goals. They're very specific, measurable, actionable, tangible, and realistic. I got my letters mixed up there, but when you set very specific, measurable goals in the short run, kind of middle length goals, and then long goals, you can begin to start with those small goals and start knocking those small ones out, and they begin to stack like a snowball on top of each other. You gain confidence and momentum with that, and then those feed into middle length goals, which then you start knocking those out, then they feed into your larger goals. So there is so much gain to be had with being clear on your vision and your goals. And then secondly, identifying your why. And when the goals feed into your why, it's a absolute game changer. When you know at a deep level, core values and core beliefs that you have at a deep level, and they feed into your goal, it just makes the goals that much easier.
What's your why, John?
I love that question. Mine, I wake up every single day with a posture and sort of an attitude to serving and adding value to those around me. And I pray this almost every single day, Nicole, that I could serve and add value to at least one person every day. I'm not focused on quantity. I'm focused on quality. And if I can change somebody's life for the better, and sometimes it's just as simple as I acknowledge, somebody at the grocery store. Far too often there's people that don't feel seen, and you holding the door open for somebody or saying, hey, I acknowledge you, or I see you, how's your day, and truly meaning it, not just expecting the generic, hey, I'm good. But that can be a source of serving. But when you do that time and time again, day after day, you can help 365 people in a year. That compounds, and over the course of a lifetime, you've helped a lot of people. So my why is tapping into serving and adding value, truly serving and putting somebody first before me every single day.
I love that stacking up too. I mean, it feels small, but when you say one person a day, 365 people a year, it's like, wow, you can have a big impact just a little bit at a time.
Absolutely. And then my last thing doesn't necessarily flow with the first two, but it's something that I try to do daily, and it's facing your fears. It can be hard to do. It is hard to do, but our fears are oftentimes just constructs of our imagination. They're a figment of our imagination, and they're things that will never actually even happen or come to fruition. There are things, obviously, that I'm not a huge fan of snakes or spiders. Actually,
Me either. Mainly the spiders.
yes, my wife is not here, so I'll say this to you guys, and hopefully she doesn't listen to this podcast. But guys, if there is a snake outside, in the past, my wife has been the one to kill it, which I hate admitting that, but
Hey, I love the honesty.
I want to acknowledge that there are things that people are afraid of. But my point with fears don't exist is that oftentimes they're things just made up in our mind. The things that you might be fearful of, they don't even happen the way that we thought they would be. And oftentimes things go a lot better than we think they would. And so if you can wake up every day and challenge yourself to do the hard things first, the rest of the day is all downhill. So for me, and I've been doing this a long time, and it's still something I don't enjoy, but I take either cold showers or I do cold bath or cold soak. I've been doing it for years, and to this day, I still can't stand it. I don't enjoy that initial shock, but the feeling afterwards can again stack the confidence that you gain from doing those hard things. It's a game changer, and that the fears can look different for everybody. But I can't stand the cold water, but I do it every single morning because of basically the mental gains that I get from it.
Oh, yep. That is not a fun way to wake up every single morning. What are your other fears that you feel like you're getting up and facing every day?
So my mind goes back, and I wanted to share this story too, but I can't stand heights, and I don't necessarily face this every day, but I wanted to share this about the importance of facing our fears. Back through officer candidate school, so I graduated from basic training, went back home and did what's called state OCS, or state officer candidate school. So basically one week in a month, 2 weeks in the summertime for, I think the program is 18 months. I did officer candidate school, and every single drill was a challenge, both mentally and physically, and just very demanding. One of the drills, we had team building and leadership obstacle course. And, for the most part, I find most of that fun on athletic. I like physical challenges, but I cannot stand heights. And there was one moment where we had this telephone pole that was planted in the ground, and there was these small little metal rungs that you had to climb up to. The day was windy, by the way, and we had to stand on this probably 2 foot by 2 foot wooden platform at the top and by ourselves, and then stand up and then jump up and out to this metal bar that hung from a nearby tree. And I was probably halfway in line, and nobody was getting it. Some people weren't even making it to the top. Other people, just weren't tall enough to jump and reach it. And I just had all these, negative what ifs in my mind. I told myself I'm going to do it. I didn't make it this far to just stop. I was questioning all my life decisions up into that point, but you know what? I did it. I climbed up to the top. It was pretty awful, but not quite as bad as I thought. And I think I'm just tall enough that I was able to jump up, and I was one of the only few to actually get that bar that hung. And to this day, and why I bring that story up is that to this day, anytime where I'm feeling low, that is a confidence booster that I have basically placed a notch in my belt of confidence, where I can tap back into that moment, that experience of, hey, I was scared to death to do it, but I did it. And the confidence gained that flooded into all areas of my life, even outside the guard, since then. And that was 3 or 4 years ago. And so I on a very regular basis, even before I do podcasts, I've done a lot of them, and still to this day, or if I'm speaking to people, I kind of have that, who am I to share my knowledge or wisdom with others? But I can tap back into that confidence and be like, you know what, I have done certain things in my life. I do have valuable things to offer and share. So that's why I share that story with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think what you're saying is when fears only exist in our mind, creating experiences where we've done hard things is stacking up that proof, right? That I can do hard things. I can be in situations where I'm fearful or afraid and have positive outcomes. And it almost creates some grounding to come back to when your brain starts to freak out and go like, hey, I don't want to do this, or this sucks, or, no, no, no. Be like, oh no, we've done this before. You're going to be fine. You can survive. It's going to turn out okay, or it may even turn out better. I mean, when you push yourself to do hard things, it's just stacking up evidence that you can do other hard things, and it'll all be okay.
Yeah, and if you can achieve X, Y, and Z, what else can you get done? And so it kind of opens your mind to, man, what else can I do out there? And things that you didn't even think you would ever attempt, you start attempting. And there is so much power in that.
Yeah. Bring this back to ranching for me, because you're also a rancher. And okay, how does all of this, like resilient mindset, doing hard things, all of that relate back to agriculture and your day-to-day life on the ranch?
I'm finding that a lot of individuals are just going through the same thing. Sometimes I feel like I'm on an island on my own, especially when my wife and I moved back. I had certain experiences. I had worked for a U.S. senator. I was soon going to be joining the military. I didn't always feel connected with individuals moving back, but we've been on the ranch here full time. I'm becoming to realize, hey, the things that I'm going through, my neighbor's going through. We actually, my dad manages our crop side of things. My wife and I manage our cattle operation, and it works good because we end up not butting heads as much because we manage what we were passionate about. But it's given me kind of a different appreciation for my dad, for instance, because I always respected him as my dad. He was a mentor to me growing up. But when you're strapped with, how do I make this payment? How do I make this bill? It hits you in a different way than when you're just growing up, even through high school. You don't know any of that. And so it's given me a deep appreciation for how I was raised, for my parents, especially how my dad was at times a little bit harder on me with certain things, but I know now why he did certain things. And so I have so much a different appreciation for the stresses that my life and I have gone through in the last 7, 8 years since we've been back here full time. And then I know that the things that I'm going through and my dad, well, our neighbors are going through also. And so it just kind of is a cool connection piece. People talk about the military being a tight knit of individual, kind of a brotherhood, and it very much is that. But agriculture is a brotherhood as well that I don't think very many people think of, but we're all going through a lot of the same stresses together. Because of that, we all need to be supportive and encouraging to those around us in the agriculture community.
Yeah, I appreciate that you bring that up, the brotherhood piece of it. And also, as we think about agriculture as a whole, it's a very stressful profession. Whether you're talking about big amounts of capital or the fact that, animals' lives are depending on you or that you never get a break most of the time. It's a 365-day a year job. Some of what you're talking about with resilient mindset and supporting the community around you can be really challenging when part of the culture of agriculture, right, is to not necessarily show that you're struggling or that you're dealing with that stress. So what tips do you have for supporting people in maybe your agriculture community who may not wear the stress as visibly, you may not even know are struggling?
I think with this question, I would speak directly to guys. I want to encourage a male listener, whoever that is that's listening to this, that strength comes from, guys who are vulnerable. You don't have to share every single emotion that you have, but there is so much strength. And some of the most masculine guys that I know are those who acknowledge that they need help and they seek help, whether it be through a coach, something like what I'm doing with resiliency and mindset coaching, or a therapist. Some things are kind of out of my wheelhouse, and I recognize that. But some of the strongest men that I know, some of the most masculine men I know, are those that aren't afraid to ask for help. There's so much strength in that, and so I just want to encourage guys that it's not a sign of weakness, like what we were kind of taught as boys to just. And I think there's a certain time and a place to just rub some dirt on it. I agree with that statement to a degree, but then there's a time and a place for that. Share the things that you're going through, because that is what builds strong men.
Yeah. Well, I think what you were talking about, sometimes feeling like you're on an island and realizing, oh, it's not just you. There's so many other people that are having this same experience. And sometimes even just knowing that, like, oh, it's not just me, I think can also help with some of that resilient mindset too, right? Because you can look at someone else and be like, they're going through it too. Maybe I can get through as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes people just need to be heard. I'd share a tip of how you can help those around you, whether it's family or friends. Just checking in with people is a game changer. Most of the time, we don't know what anybody is going through. We could be going through a financial struggle, or maybe a family just had a miscarriage. We don't know what people are going through. And sometimes people just need to feel seen and heard. Kind of going back to serving others, that serving can, again, just be holding the door open for somebody. Or I think about this often, actually, almost every time that I go grocery shopping, which is actually not that frequent. My wife doesn't let me. She's so much more efficient with that. But when I go, I think, man, this person working here sees how many people every day, hundreds probably, and they probably don't get talked to very often, and probably not at a deep level. And so I try to acknowledge that individual and truly, genuinely thank them for them helping me, work my way through getting my groceries and stuff and getting checked out. But people like that, they probably don't always feel seen and heard. And so something as small as just acknowledging somebody who's serving you, that's a service in itself. Make that person feel seen and heard.
The little things can make a huge difference. So if I'm someone who, I care about the people around me, I work in a rural community, how do maybe I start some of those conversations if I'm concerned about a family or friend who could be struggling?
Yeah, I think truthfully just opening up and asking people how they're doing, and not just with the expectation of, hey, they're going to give me, hey, I'm good. Ask it and really mean it. Most of the time, and I am very cognizant of when somebody asks me how I'm doing, even if I don't have much to give, I always change the word from good to doing well or something other than good, because it just gets overused so much. But ask individuals how they're doing. I'm big on, and I actually need to get back to this, but for quite a while, almost on a weekly basis, I would reach out to at least one person in my contact and just shoot them a text of, hey, thinking of you. It's been a while. Let's connect. Or, hey, how are you doing? Or maybe there was something on Facebook that I saw somebody did and I send them a personal message. But little things like that, but asking somebody how are they doing and actually meaning it. And if you just get the I'm good, dig into that. Ask questions that don't elicit just a good response, but ask questions in a way that opens them up to, well, actually, I'm struggling with this. So I think what's key is just asking questions to get people to open up. That's a good first starter, I think, just to continually check in on those that you care about.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love asking people like, what's going good lately?
Yeah,
Or
I like
yeah,
that.
like what's something exciting that you're working on?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're going to be in that positive mindset space, sometimes it gets them going right there. Or it opens up an opportunity for them to be honest and vulnerable and be like, you know what? Right now, not a lot. It's not a great week.
And I'd say it's not bad to say, hey, I'm not doing great. We all have low points, and we all have stresses that we deal with. The most resilient individuals, we can't eliminate stress. We're gonna always have stresses and obstacles, roadblocks that hit us, but it's how you respond to those adversities is what makes the difference.
Yeah. Let's go into leading teams and resiliency around that. Stress is typically part of success, right? Sometimes I think there may even be a belief of like, if you're not stressed, you're not working hard enough, especially in high stress situations, right? Like your military experience or even on the farm or ranch. How do you respond to that mindset of there is stress? You do need to stress yourself to some extent to be successful. How do you manage through that without going too far?
There's research that suggests when it comes to stress, our minds don't know the difference between something that we're excited about versus something that we're maybe anxious or worried about. And so I think if we can acknowledge in the moment that we're feeling stressed, dial in and think about, is this in response to something negative that's happening or a positive? And if it's a negative, try to reframe it to a positive. So just using this as a broad example, because I think most of us maybe don't like public speaking. Your mind's response to that is the same as, hey, I'm anxious for my birthday party tomorrow. And I'm sharing that because we're celebrating my dad's 70th birthday here in a couple of days. But our minds don't know the difference between that. And so rather than, hey, let's be nervous and stressed for this talk that I'm going to give, I'm going to turn that into, I have a real opportunity to serve somebody. And I think to your point, I think, I don't know if I'd call it good stress. I mean, maybe you could, but I think certain stresses, if we're framing it in response to something positive, it's actually a benefit to us, because that excited kind of anticipation actually helps us lock in. It helps us stay focused. Anytime I do a podcast or I get on a coaching call or I give a talk to a group of individuals, or I'm doing a workshop for my soldiers, I still have a certain level of kind of, you don't know how it's going to go. There's a little bit of nerves that come from that, but I choose to funnel that into, there's a lot of positives here, and I use it as like a staying focused tool. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think if you're feeling a lot of stressors, reframe the anxiety into maybe a positive, and you can use it as a helpful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can take the mindset from like, oh, I'm nervous or I'm going to mess up to even that feeling of Christmas morning anticipation, or even sometimes like, I'm so excited for this to be over. You can even get you there, but it can help you kind of shift that feeling. Okay, John, I think we are going to move into some rapid fire questions. So just hit me with quick answers as much as you can through this next segment. Is there any myths or straight up bad advice about resiliency that you want to bust?
And we've already touched on this, but again, I grew up with, and not any fault to the men in my life, but I think just growing up with don't share your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings. It's just, let's move on from this. I couldn't be further from resilient individuals, because when you're closed off and not talking about things, and when you're not vulnerable, you're far from resilient. So I think that was terrible advice that most guys I know get, and probably women as well, but certainly guys get that quite often, I think.
What do you hope the next generation of ag leaders dares to do differently than your generation?
It'd be my hope that our generation continues to seek outside guidance and perspective, outside wisdom from others. I think life is a team effort. Nobody accomplishes anything, especially big in life, but really anything in general. Nobody accomplishes anything without a team. If you're training for a marathon, you need a team of supporters around you, both with nutrition, stretching, and running coach and whatnot. And you have business partners when you're ranching, you have the nutritionist and vet. And so I think that team aspect. So I hope that our generation continues to seek outside wisdom and counsel when it comes to goal setting and just accomplishing things that they want to.
Absolutely. How can leaders help their teams stay mentally strong, especially in tough times?
I like that question a lot. I think leading by example is what first comes to mind. I don't ask anything of my soldiers that I wouldn't first do myself. And I think leading by example and having a very open communication, being flexible, adaptable with those that you're leading, and then being very clear and transparent with goals, and having a lot of, I think, to get a lot of buy-in from your team members, have them be a part of the planning and the decision making process. Me as an officer, I don't always know the answer to the question, and when I'm creating a plan, I oftentimes seek my NCOs or non-commissioned officers. They're the subject matter experts, and I create and craft a plan. And so just having a very open team effort, I think, is key.
If there's one thing you hope people take away from this podcast episode, what do you hope it is?
I want to challenge people to do the hard thing first. And I want people to face the things in life that they were scared to death to do, but knowing on the other side of that is a version that they've never seen before. I began to really acknowledge that and see that as I trained for my first marathon, and really happy that you're going through that process, because there's so many mental gains. I get so many more mental gains than physical gains from running. And it's opened me up to, let's face our fears. There's so much growth and potential on the other side of that. So I want listeners to live a life, and don't live small. Don't think small, dream big. I know that sounds cliche, but we have everything inside of us to accomplish anything that we want. It just takes kind of some reshifting of our mindset and viewing challenges as opportunities to learn and grow from. But we have everything inside of us to accomplish what we want to. We just sometimes need some outside help to help get us there.
Kill the snakes, but if you need to, have a friend help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Or your wife.
Don't do it alone. Yeah. Or maybe go out and kill the snakes, but you just don't have to do it by yourself.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
So we love to ask our guests for bold opinions, hot takes at AFA. So what is an unconventional or hot take that you have, John, about leadership?
So I love this question a lot. I like that you guys asked this. So I want to quote an article that that I think about pretty often. I first read it several months ago, but the article talked about today's youth is lazy. Today's youth is lazy in language and communication. They don't seek hard work, nor have the endurance to see it through. They don't have grit or resolve, and they lack ambition with much of what they do. And that sounds like what we oftentimes hear today, isn't it, Nicole? Well, that article is actually from an op-ed in 1938 from the Chicago Tribune, written about the youth that later became the greatest generation who stormed the beaches in Normandy and helped turn the tide in World War II. And so why I share that is because each generation thinks the younger generation is lazy, not with it, not put together. And that certainly was true for the author of in 1938, who thought nothing of those who would later change the world. And Nicole, when I had the opportunity to speak to at AFA Leaders Conference this last November, and those college students in attendance greatly impressed me. I think about it often. The questions that they posed to me after I spoke in my workshop, they were questions I've never thought of before. They were questions I've never heard from or gotten from older individuals who are wise and seasoned in their work. And so I want to encourage those young leaders who might be listening to this podcast that the sky is the limit, and they could very much be considered the greatest generation, the new greatest generation. So I want young leaders to put that in their pocket, and the sky's the limit. And I want individuals to dream big and live a life that serves others and in a way that they were called to.
Yeah. Go out there and prove people wrong. I love the historical tradition of, every generation apparently has their version of millennials are spending all their money on avocado toast or, so that's a great hot take, John. I so appreciate you spending time with us today. Your story is so fascinating and interesting, and I love the way that you mix leadership and the beef industry and mental health and, service to our country and to other people. It's been awesome to get to know you. Where can people who are listening connect with you and learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find me on Instagram at Coach John Sachse, and I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. Just John Sachse, but do a lot of work on Instagram, so they can find me there.
Perfect. Well, great. Thank you so much, John, for joining us on this episode of the Cultivating Leaders Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Cultivating Leaders Podcast, brought to you by Agriculture Future of America. If you've been here before, you know we value feedback as a gift. Please leave us a review and let us know how we're doing.